Welcome to the Leadership Edge. I'm your host, Ted Gorski. The Leadership Edge is a show that's focused on those topics that are affecting you, leaders, on a day-to-day basis. On the show, we usually talk about topics and we bring in guests who will really help you become better leaders in your day-to-day activities. In today's show, I have a very unique show. I've been stopped on the street many times from people who are asking me for unsolicited legal advice about hiring people. Now, I, as a coach, don't necessarily do that, but I figured today our show is going to focus on what you need to do when you're trying to hire those people. We have talked about those key people on our shows previously, getting the right people on the bus. And today I have two great resources who are going to help us iron out the great questions you need to ask to solidify your team. So today's focus is really about the hiring process and the do's and don'ts of some of those things you're doing when you're trying to hire our various people. And I have two great guests on our shows today. Our first one I'd like to introduce is Jen Mokel. And Jen is a partner at the law firm of Cook, Little, Rosenblatt, and Manson. She has over 20 years experience assisting employers in complying with state and federal laws during all phases of the employment relationship. All phases, not just all small, but all of them. And Jen is recognized, and this is I didn't know about Jen, by Chambers USA as one of New Hampshire's leading employment law attorneys, as listed in Best Lawyers of America for Employment Law Management, and was selected one of the best lawyers as a 2015 Lawyer of the Year. Impressive! See, Ted does not just bring any old guest, he brings Lawyers of the Year. Amazing. Our second guest is Andrea Chatfield, who also is an attorney from Cook, Little, Rosenblatt, and Manson, here located in Manchester, where she provides advice and guidance to employers on risk management issues in the workplace. Andrea represents employers of all trades and types before administrative agencies in discrimination, whistleblowers, unemployment, and wage disputes. She conducts in-house trainings for employers and serves as an outside investigator for employers who need to respond to highly sensitive internal complaints of discrimination and harassment. Again, another expert. And Andrea is also listed in Chambers USA as the leading employment lawyer in New Hampshire. So ladies, welcome to the Leadership Edge.
Thanks, you. Ted. Thanks, Ted.
Well, I wanted to bring you both in because one of the things that I'm always asked in my coaching sessions and even kind of going around the street is hiring the right people for the team. And we have a series of questions here for you that I want to throw out to you just to kind of give our leaders out there kind of an idea of some of the do's and don'ts. So I have a series of questions. Let's start right from the top. First question. When did you get your degree in computer science? Now, this seems pretty innocuous. So is this let's do a thumbs up and a thumbs down, right, with these questions. So if it's okay, give me a thumbs up. If it's not, give me a thumbs down. So with this one, when we repeat it, when did you get your degree in computer science? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs down.
Down. Yikes. Why is that?
Whenever you ask questions about when did you get a college degree, it can tend to disclose a person's age.
Okay.
So you want to always stay away from questions necessarily about age, since that is a protected status under the discrimination laws. So what we recommend, though, is how do you get the right person for the right position? Focus on the skill set that you're looking for.
Okay.
Focus on, so this is what the job requires, this particular skill set, these particular computer languages, the latest versions of these languages. Do you have those skills?
Okay.
And that's how you're getting to what you really do need to know, not just what you'd like to know.
But if the job requirement requires you to have a computer science degree.
Yep. You can ask that. You can say, do you have a computer
science? Do you have a computer science, not
science?
just when you got it?
That's right. As a matter of fact, a lot of times on employment applications, you'll see the grid about list your education, and we have the degree, the year you got the degree.
Yes.
We usually recommend taking that off, because if they were getting their bachelor's degree in the 70s or 80s, that's disclosing age.
Okay.
So we say take the year off, but certainly ask what was the degree in.
So when you say when did you get it, you're leading the witness?
Yes.
Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. So we don't want to be leading the witness on these things. Okay. Second question. What an unusual name. Where is it from? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs down.
Down. That one down too.
Yes.
How come?
This is another example of how casual conversation can get you in trouble.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's natural human curiosity. What an unusual name. Where is that from? Well, you're not supposed to consider someone's national origin when you're hiring them. And so if someone were to say, oh, my name is Irish or German or Polish or whatever the name may be, suddenly now the person has disclosed to you their national origin. If you chose not to hire that person and the person was otherwise qualified, they may say, I think there was a bias against me because of my national origin. Is it a stretch? Sure. A lot of this stuff is a stretch, but let's be honest, lawyers are paid to be paranoid.
So even if you, I think they get paid by the hour to be paranoid. That's even better. So let's say you see someone's last name, even making kind of a joke and saying something about it can also kind of go down that same road. That's a thumbs down too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, in the hiring process, a couple things happen. The first one is when you come into the room and you meet the person, you want to establish a bond with them. And some of these things, even going back to your first question for a second, when did you get your degree? One of the things that people do to connect with each other is try to find commonalities, play the name game. Oh, you graduated from UNH. I went there too. What year?
Yeah.
What dorm? Those types of things.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, that what year thing can get you in trouble. Same thing with nationality. It's that natural curiosity that is both good and bad.
Okay.
And there are other ways to ask the question.
So about that dorm thing. That dorm thing, okay? Can I ask that?
You can ask the door.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
One thing to note, though, when there is an unusual name and you're not sure how to pronounce it, certainly say to the person, that's an unusual name.
How do you pronounce it?
How do you pronounce it? I want to make sure I get it right.
That's okay.
That's
That's a
okay,
thumbs
and
up.
that's actually a nice way to make a connection because
Okay.
you're showing that you're actually respecting the person.
Okay. So here's another great question. Job requires travel. Okay. And the questions here, I get a couple here. Okay. Can you travel on weekends? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Thumbs up?
That's thumbs up, really?
That's a thumbs up.
So tell me why that's a thumbs up.
Because if travel's part of the job, you're asking about how the person can do the essential functions of the job. So asking if they can travel on weekends. Now, I would first explain why traveling on weekends is a job necessity.
Yes.
Because you're going to have meetings starting early Monday mornings, and we want to make sure you get to the city in time and be ready to go Monday morning. So yeah, we do require folks to travel on weekends. Is that a problem? Is that okay? That's perfectly fine because that's very job related.
Okay. Good question. Do you drive? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
That's up. Okay.
Yeah.
And why is that a thumbs up?
Because how you get to a place, the commuting is a requirement of the job, so how the person is able to easily commute is important, and especially in New Hampshire, where we don't have mass transit, we don't have easy ways of getting places other than your car.
Yeah.
Making sure that the person can drive to work, to and from work, and if they say, no, I don't drive, you can still ask, well, how would you get to work?
Okay, if they
That's
say I
part of
can't drive, you can't ask if their license was revoked.
Right,
You
right.
can't go down that. That's a thumbs down.
Yeah, you would not want to say, why can't you drive? But you could certainly ask, how would you get to work? Now, if the job does require driving on the job, driving a company car, driving your own car, but on company business, then it will be really, you can ask, is the fact you don't have a license, is that a temporary problem or is that more ongoing? You can ask a little bit more
If
information.
that's part of the job.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
not that you can get there.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
One of the reasons why, just to kind of jump in as we go through these questions, you might be thinking, why on earth couldn't I ask that? Like, why can't I just ask everybody if you can drive?
Yeah.
Well, if it's not job related, if it doesn't matter how the person gets to work, so long as they're there reliably, sometimes people can't drive because of medical conditions.
Okay.
And we have a federal law and a state law that tell us we're not supposed to inquire about medical conditions in the hiring process with certain limited exceptions.
Okay.
And so if someone were to say, well, I don't have a license because I have a seizure disorder and I'm not able to drive as a result, well, boom, suddenly we've got now in our hands medical information that we're not supposed to consider.
Got it.
And if driving isn't job related, why go there?
Okay.
Right.
Third question part of this is, do you have children?
Okay.
Thumbs up or thumbs down on that?
Thumbs down.
That's down. That's
That's
down.
down. And this comes up, the initial question that you were asking is, the job requires travel. Can
Yes.
you do these things? And what the questioner might be getting at here is, boy, if someone's got a young family, travel might be tough for them. You know what that's doing? inadvertently perhaps stereotyping,
Yeah.
saying that if someone has a young family, they might not be able to travel. But you have no idea the resources available to them.
Sure.
Childcare resources, extended family, or what have you to support those kids. So I would not get into it. Caregiver status is also something that our federal agency, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, has been paying attention to in recent years
Okay.
and being concerned about. So if someone is a caregiver to young children, or for that matter to elderly parents, you want to steer clear of questions to elicit that.
Okay, do you have children? Does that include adult children? No, just kidding.
Just stay away.
Third part, because a lot of my coaching is dealing with adult children, so that's why I
That's
throw it
true,
out there.
very true.
Does your spouse mind you being away?
Thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
Yeah.
Thumbs down.
Really?
Yeah.
Really.
Oh, sure.
Why is that?
You know, I'll give you the legal answer second. I'm going to give you the practical one first. Why get into it? Do you really want to know if there's some domestic strife or that type of thing? Do you really want to go there in the hiring process? You don't. You want to consider the person on his or her merit. Secondly, it's one of those questions that might be more predominantly asked of a female candidate than a male. Stereotypical, but that could
Okay.
be the case. And the other is it gets to whether the person has a spouse or not. And under our state law, New Hampshire law, marital status is something you're not supposed to consider in the hiring process.
Okay, so this one can get you in trouble.
Steer clear.
Okay.
Really, the gist of this is you have a job that requires travel. What do you need to know about that? Here's a travel schedule or approximations. Can you do it?
Okay.
That's what you need to know.
Well, what I liked about today's show is that you also brought some scenarios, and you brought some slides of some scenarios. And I wanted to kind of walk through a couple of these because
Okay.
I kind of saw them, and they were quite fascinating. And I wanted to really kind of
Some of them
talk
are
a little bit
kinda
about them.
Yeah.
So let's throw up the first here, the first scenario. You're interviewing someone. So you concluded an interview with an out-of-town candidate. In her follow-up thank you email, she mentions she found the job and you as the interviewee very attractive. She asked you to meet her for drinks at her hotel. So as a guy, what's wrong with that?
Flattering, perhaps.
Sure.
Very flattering.
Sure.
But from a legal perspective, what's the challenge on that one? What's the
For-
issue?
You know, there are a bunch of them. So the first one is, I mean, you can really get into concerns around sexual harassment. Let's suppose you meet the candidate at the hotel bar for drinks, and let's suppose, there's some more talk about going further than meeting for drinks, and the candidate says no, and then the candidate is not hired for the position. She might say, the reason I wasn't hired is because I refused this relationship or tryst or whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
And so we've got issues around that. Frankly, the other thing that screams out at me from this one is poor judgment. Poor judgment on the part of the candidate for
Yes.
inviting the
Yes.
the person out, and then if the person were to take her up on the offer, super poor judgment there.
Yeah, it sounds like this one here can open up some very, very big issues.
Yes.
Both for the company in itself.
Yes.
Now, this wasn't a scenario that actually happened, did it?
Pretty close.
Yes.
Pretty close.
Yes,
Yes.
we've
Yeah.
changed.
Yikes.
Yes, we've changed things to protect
Wow.
the innocent, so to speak. Yes, I've actually heard of things now a couple times recently, somewhat similar to this.
Okay, so
Yes.
do not do that. If you're a leader, do not go down that road. We don't
Don't
preach
do
that
it.
here on the Leadership Edge. Okay, let's jump down to our next scenario. You inform a candidate that the job requires a pre-employment drug test, which for some companies I'm working with actually do that.
Absolutely.
She tells you that she will fail the test because she uses medical marijuana. Now, we're not Denver, Colorado, right? So what's up with this scenario? What's wrong with this?
Where are we here?
Yes.
Well, so medical marijuana is an issue that we've been talking about in New Hampshire now. It is becoming closer to being our reality.
Yes.
Because we have an approved state law that says we're going to offer medical marijuana to qualified users. We are marching forward in the process to get that up and running. The way that people will obtain medical marijuana is through dispensaries, which are not yet up and running. So at this very moment in time, New Hampshire residents are not going to be authorized medical marijuana users because the system is not yet in place. But it will be in 2015. So if this candidate says it to you, and if she's a New Hampshire resident, you're going to know she's not actually an authorized medical marijuana user, and she might be getting her marijuana through not so legal means.
Oh.
So there's that.
Kind of scares me when you know she gets it through a dispensary. I mean, it
Right.
looks like you've done some research
Well,
here.
that's if she says it now.
Yeah.
Once
Right.
the dispensaries are up,
Okay.
then she could be somebody who is entitled or is authorized to have medical marijuana. But I believe they'll still have to have a card. They'll have a registration card that they'll have to have so that she can prove she has medical marijuana.
So this is bringing it down to another level. When you say dispensary,
Yeah.
that's what? That's a...
There's going to be authorized places within the state of New Hampshire where someone who's been approved by their healthcare provider to use medical marijuana can go and legally purchase medical marijuana in specific amounts.
Okay.
So rather than getting drugs on the street or wherever people get them, you will go to this licensed, approved facility to lawfully obtain those drugs. That's not up and running yet. So if she's a New Hampshire resident telling you right now in 2014 she's a medical marijuana user, she's not doing it legally. If she lives in Massachusetts or Maine or some of our other border states, it's possible that she might be.
Could be.
And so what do you do with that?
Yeah.
What a lot of employers are wrestling with now is they wonder, people who are authorized to use medical marijuana in other states or who will be in New Hampshire, usually they're very sick. It's a compassionate law designed to help people who are quite ill use medical marijuana to help alleviate their symptoms or deal with their illness. And so what do we know about people who are this ill?
Yes.
They are usually within the protections of our federal Americans with Disabilities Act or our state law against discrimination that protects people who are disabled. Some employers wonder, does that mean that I have to accommodate medical marijuana use or that I have to bend the rules on my pre-employment drug test? Under federal law, cases from other jurisdictions tell us, no, you don't have to bend, you don't have to accommodate. Our state law in New Hampshire reads similarly.
Okay.
So a New Hampshire employer should be able to adhere to its usual pre-employment drug test process and rules. But we've got a little bit of a wrinkle because our New Hampshire Commission for Human Rights hasn't told us with any finality how they're going to address these issues. So what I would honestly say to a leader faced with this issue of an applicant who's otherwise qualified disclosing that she uses medical marijuana, hit the pause button, probably talk to a lawyer and figure out what are the job duties of this person. You know, if this is a candidate who's going to be doing the driving and traveling we were just talking about, that's a different issue. But, you know, learning a little bit more about it. But caution here, this is going to be a very hot issue in 2015.
So it sounds like this one's a little smoky, no pun intended.
Yeah. Well, the thing that adds more smoke to it is that we also passed a law here in the state just this summer that actually requires hospitals and other healthcare providers to have drug testing policies.
Oh, okay.
So they're going to have to wrestle with
This one.
And they're going to have drug testing policies that are going to include reasonable suspicion drug testing as well as other types. So it's something we're going to see a lot more about.
Okay. So let's jump into the next scenario. Scenario 3. A background check shows the candidate is listed on the sex offender registry. Yikes.
And I've had this a couple of different times.
No way, really? So
Absolutely.
what does the leader do at that
Absolutely.
point?
Well, again, it's something where you look at what does the job require. You start with that. What does the job require?
Yeah.
Certainly that somebody is on a sex offender registry, whether you can terminate them for that or not, it becomes an issue because obviously there's probably been a criminal conviction attached to that.
Yes.
And the EEOC has come out with very comprehensive guidelines on how employers should be handling criminal backgrounds on their employees and their applicants in order to make sure there's not a disparate impact or disparate treatment of people of certain minorities or national origins who tend to have a higher arrest record in society, higher criminal background records. So they want to make sure that we're being careful to make sure that if we are considering criminal backgrounds and criminal histories, that we're doing it on a targeted basis, on an individualized basis. And you start with the job. What does the job require? Is this going to impact the person's job or their qualifications for the job? And if so, you consider the types of information that you want to think about. Well, how long ago was the person on there?
Yeah.
What was the underlying conviction and the underlying facts of the crime that happened? And certainly what's happened with the person since then. Have they rehabilitated? Have they had a good employment record since they got on the list? But if there's going to be positions that require a high degree of trust, then you're going to have to consider this as a really significant factor.
So if I'm a leader interviewing someone, and let's say part of our process is a background check, and I find out that I see this, can I just say, no dice, I'm not going to hire this person? Am I legally okay? Or is that still opening me up because of this?
The EEOC would say they have a problem with that because
Okay.
it's a blanket screening out process.
Okay.
Any sex offenders, I don't want to hire them. It's a blanket screening
Yes.
out process. Go by an individualized assessment of what the job is, what the facts were, get the information.
But if the job included, let's say, having to work with females quite extensively, could that be good enough to say we don't feel comfortable with that?
If it's in an unsupervised environment,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps, if the offense dealt with violence against women,
Yes.
yes. But if the offense is something else,
Yep.
that's a problem. Then you have to consider, like I say, you have to kind of match it up and you have to analyze it.
All right, so let's say we analyze. I'm going to take it a step further.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say I analyze and go, okay, I have analyzed this, and I still may want to move forward in this process. And let's say that I go down the process of hiring and say I want to hire this person. I'm not saying I would do that, but do I have to notify and let my employees know that this person has a sex offender history? Do I have to protect my employees at all?
No.
You have to protect your
No.
employees in the sense that you've got a legal obligation to provide a safe workplace.
Yes.
So you've got a general
Yes.
obligation to provide a safe workplace.
Yes.
But you have no obligation to broadcast anyone's criminal history.
If
Okay.
you've come to the conclusion that you can hire this person, then you've hopefully gone, that's why you want to go through that process of
sure.
assessment, because at that point you've hopefully resolved any particular issues that you feel this person's an immediate threat.
Right.
And if you've come to the conclusion, no, this happened a long time ago, the job is going to be heavily supervised, we're
Sure.
not talking about a high degree of trust.
Yes.
So I feel like we can hire this person, then at that point you've come to a conclusion that there's no imminent danger, there's no imminent threat. If your job is where one service technician that's going into people's homes, that's
could be an
where
issue.
Right.
that's where the red flags are going to come
Okay,
up.
so it sounds like
Yeah.
if you hit this, this is something that you should really bring
Put
to
the
your
pause button
HR
on, yes.
and really talk to your legal department on this
Absolutely.
one. All right.
Absolutely.
One final scenario we'll throw up, because we're getting
Okay.
we got so much to cover here today, but this is a kind of another great one. You Google a candidate and find his online blog, which contains anti-gay commentary. The job will require managing a team that includes an openly gay employee. Yikes.
Right.
So
Yes.
what happens here?
You know, this is happening a lot more because we can Google
Sure.
people and find out a lot of information
And do
about
you
them.
recommend Googling people?
You know,
in
we do.
hiring in process?
We
You
do, but
You
we do it in a
Doing
specific...
it intelligently.
Do it-
Intelligently.
Yes, do it in a particular way. You have people who are your decision makers on who's going to get a job.
Yes.
They should not be the ones doing the Googling. Because when you Google someone, you find out a lot of things. They may be active in their church.
Yes.
They might have pictures of their kids all over the place. And now you know they have kids. They have, you're finding out a lot of personal information about them. Somebody else in the organization should be doing the Google searches.
Okay.
And they should be trained to know what information not to consider, but what information would be relevant that you do need to pass on to the decision makers.
And do you do that with your clients? Do you show them how to do that?
We
We've coached
absolutely
them.
talk with our clients about doing that and creating sort of a filter or a screen.
Okay.
So that the person who's doing the search, who's been trained and is educated on this, knows what goes through the screen and what doesn't.
Okay.
And that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, and I talk about it when I do management. We both do management trainings. We talk about that.
Okay.
But like with this particular scenario,
Yes.
I think certainly the fact that the person has put out there for the world to see in a public manner a lot of anti-gay commentary. If you have gay people who work in your job, and this person's going to be managing that
Sure.
person, that's relevant information. And actually, you can pass it. The Google searcher would pass it on to the decision maker. The decision maker should go back and ask the candidate about that to say, how would you feel about the fact that there's a member on your team who's a outwardly gay person? How do you feel about that? Have you managed other people who have sexual orientations
Sure.
different from yours? That's important because it's job related. And you have policies that prohibit discrimination and harassment, and one of those protected categories is
Yes.
sexual orientation under our state law.
And by the way, this fall under not only anti-gay, but it could be anti-woman, it could be
Yes.
Absolutely.
some other,
Anything, yes.
internationality or whatever. So
Anti-religious,
it covers
yep,
all that kind of stuff.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
You have an obligation to make sure the people you're hiring understand what your discrimination and harassment policies prohibit. So yeah, you would have an obligation in that instance.
Well, this has been awesome. I'm kind of looking at the clock. We're running kind of close to time here. First of all, in wrapping up here in like 30 seconds or so, what is some advice would you give to leaders? Like some general advice, because we've talked about a lot of topics here today. We could probably go a whole lot, or I have a whole lot more questions. Maybe we do a second show. But what is some advice you would give to leaders?
What I would say is when you're hiring, think about what it takes to make a person successful within your organization and successful within the specific job.
Yes.
And try to design questions that get at that, those job-related considerations.
Okay.
Also, get some training for yourself and other leaders within your organization so that they know what you can and cannot ask. But if you are driving toward what will make a person successful, that's going to help you make the best decision.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I want to thank you both for being on today's show. I think it really added a lot of value, and I appreciate you sharing your advice. So,
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
You're more than welcome. So if you're looking for more information about Jen and Andrew and their firm, please check out the slide at the end of the show. And as usual, if there's anything we can do in terms of for your leadership, my name is Ted Gorski. I'm president of Get Your Edge. We'd be more than happy to help you with all your leadership needs. So thanks again for tuning in for today's show, and we'll see you next time.